Hare Krishna. We would like to welcome all of you all to this panel discussing a very important and crucial concern that every human being should have, and more importantly, being in a Vaishnava community, it is a concern that is most important to address and most important to have discussions over. This panel is about the impending and the very, very concerning issue of domestic violence that has always been there, but probably never addressed. And it has taken a much greater and a more cruel shape in today's times, and which really needs to be addressed in the most important way. I'll begin this panel by talking about a very important principle that Mahabharata speaks about when it comes to oppression. The Mahabharata says that the tears of a weak person, someone who is made to cry, becomes the puddle in which a strong person drowns and dies. When someone makes somebody cry tears, those very tears become the cause of the destruction of somebody who is offending, who's making that person cry. Keeping that in light, I think we need to really address this whole concern of domestic violence and see so many perspectives that potentially can be seen, how to handle this, how to prevent it, and how to ensure that families are stable, women are protected, children are living in communities and families that are more stable and do not have to see so much violence in their homes. So this is the thought process behind why we're having this panel. Before we go ahead into the panel and begin discussions on the subject, we would welcome each of the panelists here and request everyone to introduce themselves, and then we can quickly get on to the discussion. So I would like to request Partha Prabhu and Uttama Prabhu to introduce themselves and share their experiences, and would like to know them in a better manner to understand how they will contribute to this panel in the best possible way. Please.
So I'm obviously Partha Das, and this is my wife Uttama. We're members of the Grihasta Vision Team, and we've been conducting programs to help create stable families and marriages in Srila Prabhupada's society for almost 20 years now. We've conducted programs in approximately 24 countries, and we'd like to share with you later some of the experience that we've had in observing the presence of domestic violence in Srila Prabhupada's society.
I'm with him.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to see both of you all together, and it's wonderful to see you are setting an amazing example of a working relationship, a thriving relationship. I can see that, and a relationship that is based on inspiration and sacrifice. At this point, we would like to invite Krishnarupa Prabhu to introduce herself and share her experiences with the panel.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the opportunity to speak at this panel today. Well, I've been a devotee for a very long time, but it's only maybe in the last 10 years that I've taken a specific interest in domestic and family violence. I'm a council member on Australia's Zonal Council, a voting member there, and they appointed me as the Women's Minister for Australia. So when I took on that role, I started doing a lot of research and study into the prevention of sexual harassment, into domestic violence, And I went around to a lot of our temples presenting those seminars. And the particular seminar that I have on domestic and family violence, which I call Harmony in the Home, I have delivered that seminar pretty much all around now, thanks to Zoom, to South Africa, to Russia, to India, and Australia as well. So it's something that is very, very important in our society, that we actually educate devotees about domestic violence, because domestic violence has so many nuances and so many layers. There may be devotees who actually don't realize that they are perpetrating domestic violence, and there may be devotees who don't realize they are victims of domestic violence. So I think it's so important that we have panels like this, that we try and educate devotees what to do in these situations. So that's pretty much in a nutshell. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts, and welcome you to the panel. We would like to ask Radharani Prabhu to share her thoughts on this. And please introduce yourself so we know your experiences in this field.
Hare Krishna. I have been doing marriage counseling for many years now. Originally, it was just as a devotee helping out others. But later on, as I realized that there were so many problems, so I went on to get professionally qualified. So I am a clinical psychologist and also a REBT therapist and a marriage counselor. And now by Uttama Prabhu's inspiration and blessings, I am on their team also, the JVT. And I have seen a lot of prevalence of these problems that we are talking about. And I surely feel that I would really like to be part of helping and creating awareness on these matters, because so many people come to me with these problems, even people who are very highly qualified and earning, but they are staying in abusive relationships because they feel guilty to take some action on it. So I'm grateful for this wonderful opportunity. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for sharing your experiences, and I'm sure you'll add a lot of value to this panel. Before we go ahead, I'll introduce myself. I'm Shubha Vilas Das. I have a degree in engineering and a degree in law, specializing in patent law, and then a PhD specializing in leadership from Valmiki Ramayana. I also have just completed my MA in psychology. So, of course, I travel around the world, meet hundreds of people, and so many people open up to me, sharing their experiences and sharing their pain. And time and again, I hear both sides of the story, because I am in a male body. A lot of men come and open up to me to share what they have gone through in their lives in marriages. And so I do get perspectives on the men's side also. But also a lot of women come and share about their abusive relationship. I recently was speaking to one lady who is an IAS officer. It's like, I mean, in India, IAS officers are like really, really powerful people, And she's one of an IAS officer in the central government of India. And she is in the midst of a very abusive relationship. Imagine at such levels, this still continues. So it's something very sad, and it's something that has to be addressed in the best possible way. So having introduced all the panelists, we would jump into the topic now, because I think all of us are very much eager to be a part of the problem solving and be a part of the solution, rather than just speak about the problem. So we're going to ask some very specific questions to the panel, and I'll be requesting each of the panelists to share their thoughts on that specific question, and then we can open up for discussions post that. So the first question that we would like to address and we would like to speak about is, why should men be involved in this conversation? So each of us, let us throw our thought process on this particular question, why men need to be involved in this conversation, and then we will have a discussion together. So I'm going to randomly pick up one of y'all, and then y'all can please share your thoughts, okay? We would like to start with Krishnarupa for this particular question.
Thank you. Just one thing I'd like to say, that domestic violence is statistically perpetrated by men, but not always by men. So I think we need to also bring into the equation that sometimes men themselves are a victim of domestic violence. It may not be physical violence, but it can be any of the other psychological, emotional, etc. So I just wanted to bring that up, although the statistics always do point that men are the main perpetrators, because I guess that, you know, their dependents are more vulnerable. So why should men be involved in this conversation? It's so important that we need to have both sides of the equation. So in that way, men and women can stand side by side together in eradicating domestic abuse from Prabhupada's movement. So those who are perpetrators, and I mentioned when I was asked to introduce myself, how important it is that we educate devotees about domestic violence. So those who may not have previously considered themselves perpetrators, by listening and understanding a little bit more about it, they need to also face up to their behavior and seek professional help. Now, marriage guidance counseling does not work in domestic and family violence situations. It works in conflict in marriages, of course, and you know, we've got two wonderful, well, all of you very wonderful, working on this kind of thing with devotees. But someone who perpetrates violence in the home, they need specific counseling. So the perpetrator needs to face up to their reality. Okay, this is not the behavior of a devotee. This is not the behavior even of a civilized person, devotee or not devotee. So if they can face up to their behavior, be honest with themselves, and seek professional help for men who perpetrate violence in the home, then that can really go a long way in preventing it. And, you know, most of our managers are men, not all of our ISKCON managers are men, but we do have a majority. So they need to also get trained up. They need to understand how to identify it. They need to understand the dangers involved when there's identification there, because always, as we know, safety is the main point. Is the person safe? So they need to be trained also in what to do in a domestic violence situation. And men have that, you mentioned before that quote from Mahabharata, Prabhu, where you know, the vulnerable, those who can shed tears, they need to be protected. So in most cases, it is the female. So it's very important that men get involved in this conversation. They either can circumvent it, or they can be part of it. Thanks.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts. And you brought up a very, very interesting and a very important angle about why men need to be involved. Thank you very much for that. We would like to ask Radharani to share her thoughts on this.
Yeah, so Prabhuji, you mentioned that we want to be part of the solution and not just talk about the problem. So that's very true. So then we ask a question that who is causing the problem? So generally when there are incidents of gender-based violence, domestic abuse, people ask questions about the victim, that what did they do that caused this type of abuse? You know, generally it is the focus is shifted to the other side, whereas actually we should be asking the question that what is the mindset of the abuser that led him to engage in such acts of, you know, violence? Because abuse is never correct. Abuse can never be correct, because you are actually hurting somebody whom you should be protecting, or you should be supporting, you should be grateful to, and you are hurting. So it could be wife, it could be mother, it could be daughter, sister, anybody that you are abusing. So if it is the men who are committing this violence, then they need to be aware that they are doing something wrong. There are different stages of understanding which are mentioned for changing. I won't go into that because the question is different. But if they become aware and if their mindset changes, then the problem will be solved. Because otherwise it's like we talking about it, but they are not bothered or they are not aware, they are not conscious. And it is the men who become aware about this first, that their friends, somebody, some friend, some relative is doing this. So if they have the courage to come open and discuss these things, then it will spread more awareness. And this awareness is crucial for the protection of women. The more the people know about domestic violence and what it does to the victims and what defines domestic violence. Generally, people think only when we physically hurt, that is violence. No, but there are so many other forms of not financially, cooperating or not emotionally abuse. So many aspects are there. So the more these topics are spoken about and more when prominent members of society speak about these things, they will spread awareness to others. When fathers speak to their sons about it, when mothers speak to their sons about it, then that will spread more awareness. It has to go to the micro level. Then things will change. So therefore, the more we have these type of awareness seminars and such discussions, I feel it will reach more number of people and that will benefit everyone.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for your thoughts. Uttama Prabhu and Partha Prabhu would like to share your thoughts on this.
I find it's very strengthening when men talk with other men and they're able to set higher standards among themselves. It has a lot more impact than when it comes from other sources, like when they're in peer groups and there's men that are more outspoken about the impact of violence on women and proper attitudes for men and what's healthy masculinity. All these things are very encouraging when they're spoken of in men's groups. So I think that it's really, really important to have men in these conversations, both in their peer groups and in mixed gender groups. It's very important to have men and women in the discussion groups. It'll have much more potency. Do you want to add something?
And I think it's really important for men to realize how big of a problem this actually is in our society and the world. As I mentioned, we've been doing seminars in 24 countries for almost 20 years. And I would be hard pressed to recall giving a seminar where there was, say, a dozen or more individuals. And every seminar we do, we always do a short section on symptoms of abuse. And almost every time we've done that, I'll do a scan of the eyes of everyone in the audience, and there'll be at least one woman with tears in her eyes. And as I say, I'd hard pressed to remember a time when I didn't see that. And that was quite an eye-opener for me to see how pervasive abuse is in our society. So it is a big problem. And I think it's very important for men to realize this is something that's ingrained even within our society, and we need to do all we can as men and protectors to try and correct things for the better.
Thank you everyone for sharing your thoughts on this very important question, why men need to be involved in this discussion on domestic abuse. In my humble opinion, the reality also is that every story has two sides. There is one side where which is a tear-filled side of the story, and there's another side which seems to be a very cold side of the story. And both the sides are equally important to be heard and to be understood. Because if domestic violence has to be prevented, it is important to understand the psychology of the people who actually are doing it and what is triggering them to do it. And in that is where we need to involve men. And as we all have personally experienced that though domestic violence happens on men also, but it also happens, but it mostly happens on women. And therefore, both the sides, their stories need to come out. and men need to openly start speaking about why their friends abuse their wives or their daughters or their mothers or whoever, and because a lot of men do speak about it to their friends, and unfortunately a lot of men speak about it proudly to their friends. And when and that's when it actually goes into the psychology of other men, that if this person is able to do it, it seems to be a macho to do it. It seems to be like a strong idea to do it, and that's when they get all these ideas. And when men become vulnerable in such discussions and they actually start opening up, sharing how it is not a great feeling of strength, it's actually a feeling of weakness for someone to abuse. For any abuser, any bully is actually not strong. Most bullies and most abusers are very weak internally, and they show that they're strong by bullying and by abusing, and it kind of makes them feel stronger about it. So this is wonderful that all of you all have shared your thoughts. Krishnarupa, you have your hands raised. You have something to say?
Yes, just a very quick point to add, that we've been talking about protection of women and how the man's role is to protect the women. Sometimes that's misinterpreted to mean that it must mean the man must control the woman. And that's where you get that imbalance. So it's not that the husband or the father or whatever, it's not that they have the last word in the home. In fact, in one of the states in Australia, here in Victoria, they've now added coercive control as one of the signs of one of the examples of domestic violence. So that manipulation and that control, that's not protection. So I think that's a really important point, that, protection means that you're actually encouraging your partner in their devotional service, in their growth as devotees, as human beings, not that you're controlling everything that they do or say.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And I really resonate with that. I mean, I've recently been dealing with one family where the husband has been so controlling that the wife she doesn't have one single rupee of her own, even though she does help earn. But her bank account, her credit, her cards, her passwords are all with the husband. And without his sanction, she can't do anything at all, even if it is something very, very small. And obviously, this has not only come from her husband, but this was also be the same situation with her father. And she always felt that this is how it is naturally, you know. And then at some point, when she actually started talking to other people, she realized that this is not how it is naturally happening. This is not how it should be naturally happening. And that's when she realized that she is in a very abusive relationship and in a very controlled and manipulative relationship. So thank you for bringing that up, Krishnarupa. I think it's a very, very important and a very pertinent point. Let us jump on to the next question, which is what is sattvic masculinity? I think this term sattvic masculinity it almost seems to be like a pun. It almost seems to be like two opposite words, put together. But it's very interesting to have a discussion. I would love to know all your thoughts on it. Please, Uttama, you can begin the discussion.
Well, I was just realizing that what you were describing is what's now termed as toxic masculinity. So sattvic masculinity is pretty much the opposite. In toxic masculinity, to be a man, you've got two emotions are manly, lust and anger. Everything else is like, eh. So we need to change that culture, and that culture is going to be changed by men talking to other men. Because when they can understand from other men how to improve their lives by expanding their emotions, then their lives will improve also. Want to add to that?
I was just going to say how control and abuse is actually the antithesis of Vaishnavism. It's it's the failure of compassion. It's just complete and utter total failure of compassion. And in terms of the previous discussion you're having on the aspect of control, there's an interesting article that was attributed to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and it appeared in a Harmonist magazine, and he describes a Vaishnava marriage. And it's quite interesting. He describes that both the man and the woman should only accept someone as a spouse who they see as a better servant of the Lord than themselves. So how are you going to accomplish that? It's basically, it means you both have to be very humble. And it says, neither has any right or sense of proprietorship over the service or the property of the other. Neither can demand service from the other, and neither can impose their service requests upon the other. So it actually paints almost a very egalitarian picture of Vaishnava marriage. And the article concludes by describing how this system of Vaishnava marriage has its origin in the worship of the household deity. So, in other words, the household deity is the boss of the house, and the husband and wife are meant to cooperate together in harmony to serve the household deity. So basically, it's pretty simple. Krishna is the boss, we're meant to serve him. And when we try and control each other and manipulate, that's we've missed the point. I remember one gentleman came up to us once with his wife, and he asked, "What is the ideal of a Vedic wife?" And I could see his wife was rolling her eyes. And so between the lines, you could read, "How can I control my wife?" And that's not Vaishnavism. That's not Vaishnavism. And so abuse, it's really a failure of compassion. And there's many reasons why men fail at compassion. And as Uttama was saying, like men's groups can also help men to realize that maybe they have to change or modify their behavior. And also some men who are extremely abusive, especially extremely physically abusive, we in those kind of men's sangha may not be able to help them. Many of those type of men will only seek help if it's mandated either by the courts, or if the wife says, "If you don't change, I'm out of here." And so there's a whole spectrum of different degrees of abuse, but severely abusive persons, they will need some serious counseling to help them realign their consciousness with their values. And our philosophy, we understand everyone is eternal servant of Krishna. Everyone in their eternal nature does have those qualities of compassion and love. But in this world, some people become so far removed from their actual values that it can take a lot of work to get them to realign with their values. And generally those people they've been a victim of abuse in the past, and it just becomes a part of that perpetual cycle of abuse, which goes on generation after generation. So again, it's a huge problem in our society, and it's something we need to address. Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done.
Thank you. I think what you spoke is very profound, and actually goes straight to the root of what is toxic masculinity, as Uttama Prabhu put it very nicely. Krishnarupa Prabhu, you would like to add in something now?
Yes, I'm just going to jump in really quickly. There's a beautiful quote in a purport in 4th Canto, chapter 25, verse 36. And Prabhupada says, "The wife is the cause of all kinds of success in religion, economic development, sense gratification, and ultimately salvation. When one accepts a wife, it is to be understood that he's being helped in his progressive march towards liberation." So, the wife has such an important role in the marriage, so critical. And a man who is, has this inflated idea of masculinity, that it is about making someone subservient to them, and just like Uttama and Partha were talking about, or Partha Prabhu was talking about, a marriage should be seen, how a wife should be seen. it's so important. I just wanted to add that quote because I thought it was a really nice one.
Thank you for sharing that. Would you like to elaborate further on your idea of sattvic masculinity while you're on it?
Well, sattvic masculinity really means that you're following the principles of Vaishnava culture. So it's not really about being a man or being a woman. It's about developing those qualities of a Vaishnava, trying to develop those qualities following Prabhupada's footsteps. So, I hear this so many times that a victim of domestic violence will say to me, "Oh, but my husband is such a good devotee. He's a really nice devotee. He's always at the Mangalarti, he's always at the temple. And he's such a nice devotee. I must be doing something wrong that he, is violent to me." So that's such a very, very typical situation where that man is not a good devotee. He's just got the guise of being a good devotee. And unfortunately, the victim of the domestic violence, she is thinking, "Oh, it's my fault. If only I had done this, or if only I hadn't said this, then, I wouldn't have been hit, or I wouldn't have been pushed around, or, my mobile phone thrown on the ground." It's really about examining ourselves as aspiring devotees. That's what I think about that, sattvic masculinity. It's really about who are we really, and who are we trying to aspire to be, which is servants of Krishna and Prabhupada and our spiritual master.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that was really beautifully put. Very grateful for your points and your thoughts on this. Radharani Prabhu would like to share your thoughts.
Yeah. So this tendency or this attitude to commit this type of behaviors, where does it come from? That also is very important, as Partha Prabhu rightly said. So most of the time it is due to some social, misconceptions that people have, that men should be tough. Maybe as children, they have been taught that they should not express their emotions. You're a man. Then if you're tough with yourself, then you're tough with others too. You're not able to empathize when somebody is undergoing distress, and you act tough rather than being sensitive and helping out. So that is one thing. In India, a lot of domestic violence happens because of the problem of dowry. The people are not getting dowry. So that is another issue that comes up. Also, many a times it's because of some childhood exposed to this type of behavior from elders. Most of the time, the child would have watched his father inflicting this type of abuse on the mother. And the irony is that they hate their father for doing that, but they end up doing the same things themselves with their own wife and their children. And so when you are in this type of environment, or you have not been taken care of in childhood properly, then these people tend to become very hard-hearted, and then they engage in this type of behavior. But sometimes when it is pointed out to them, they start becoming more conscious, and some, not everybody, some of them get ready to go for therapy related to this, and then through certain methods like the CBT, and there are other methods through which they are given some information. So toxic masculinity is mainly thinking that I should be tough, I should be in control, I should be very powerful. So as they said, Uttama Mataji and Partha Prabhu said that it's completely opposite to the principles of Vaishnavism. So teaching them what is sattvic masculinity. So when I heard from other speakers, I understood that people have got a wrong view of masculinity. So masculinity doesn't mean you use your power to control people. So taking care, as Krishnarupa Prabhu rightly said, that taking care doesn't mean control. I gave a talk on this once, care or control. What you perceive as care may come across as control or suppression to the partner. So making them understand that there's a difference. So you want to care for someone, you have to first understand what they need, what they feel. Only then you can actually take care of them. So stressing the importance of partners understanding each other's needs and feelings so that they can care for them properly, I feel is very important to create this awareness, and that they can understand that a man can be masculine by protecting his wife in the way she seeks protection, not the way he thinks she should protect. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing this. I think all of you have given really valuable inputs on the idea of sattvic masculinity. In my humble understanding of this terminology, the word sattva comes from the base of knowledge. The mode of goodness is always based on true understanding. And any kind of relationship in this world, whatever it is, has to be based on respect. The moment you cross the line of respect, the relationship starts fumbling. And anyone who is based in Sattva Gun, the foundation of our spiritual life is the principle of Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Sahishnunam Amani Namanadena Kirtaniya Sadahari. And humility, tolerance, and respect. When we talk about respect, what are we talking about? It's not just respect in terms of the externals of what respect is, by calling someone Prabhu or, paying obeisances on time and things like that. That's the externals of respect. Respect also means respecting a person's existence, respecting a person's opinion, valuing a person's contribution. The Srimad Bhagavatam, the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, when a living entity is born, the Bhagavatam calls the living entity as Jantu. Jantu is a very, very interesting word, which means that the moment all of us are born, we are all Jantus. Jantus are people who take from others, who grab from others. A child, till a certain age, the child is called a Jantu in the Bhagavatam. Why? The child is just focused on taking. One day, the child thinks, I should feed my mother. The day the child thinks I should feed my mother, the child evolves from being a Jantu to being a Jiva. And as you study Bhagavad Gita, understand the Gita principles, you come to the level of Atma Tattva, which is much higher than a Jiva. And then, as you progress in your spiritual life, you reach what is known as Vaikuntha Chetana, which is the highest level of consciousness. So a Grihasta family, anyone who wants to live a life in a Vaishnava way, we have to eventually reach Vaikuntha Chetana. But you cannot reach Vaikuntha Chetana by behaving like a Jantu. Toxic masculinity is actually taking you backwards towards the mindset of a Jantu, which is just taking, which is just caring for oneself. Vaikuntha Chetana is actually caring about others, respecting others, tolerating, and the whole concept of humility. And that's where sattvic masculinity comes into picture. The idea of Purusha, masculine, the word masculine means Purusha. We understand there's only one Purusha in this world, and that is Krishna. Everyone else is Prakriti. We're all females in that sense. And the moment somebody starts thinking, I'm male, it could be a woman thinking that I'm male. It's not about the body. It's about the propensity to control. It is about the propensity to think that I'm the enjoyer. And that's when the problem begins. If it is my way or the highway, it simply is the idea of Purusha, the idea of toxic masculinity. So I think we have spoken on this subject wonderfully and conclusively. Let us go on to the next question, which is, what does it mean for a man to be a protector? Let us begin this discussion with Krishnarupa. Please, can you go ahead and share your thoughts on this question, please?
Well, I touched on that earlier, that being a protector doesn't mean being the controller or being the supreme controller. We're all little Ishwaras. We're not the big Ishvara. So that, men tend to have could have a tendency to think, well, protecting means that my wife and children are my serfs. They are my servants. I'm the, the controller of the family, where it really should be more about partnership, and it should be more about that we're in this together. We're trying to raise a family. We're trying to have a successful marriage. Let's work on this together and listen to each other. What do you think we can do in this situation? I mean, ultimately, someone has to make the decision. That's fair enough. But at least there should be equal dialogue between both parties. And then if a solution can't be reached, then some compromise might be needed. Okay, well, you want this, I want that. Okay, how can we meet in the middle? So protection is critical, that we all need protection. We all need help. But the wife can also protect the husband by, protecting him against his senses, and same with the husband. So it's really, it's about that partnership. And Prabhupada refers to a marriage as being the most intimate friend to each other. So to me, that's, and from what I understand of the scriptures, that's what protection means, that you're helping each other to progress in your spiritual life.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Radharani Prabhu, would you like to share your thoughts on this?
Yeah. Yes, this is very important, that it's a partnership where you help each other. So you help each other to help each other, actually. For example, if I need help from my husband, I help him to help me, which means on the railway tracks, both the lines move together in the same direction. So having a shared vision is very important. And as far as a man being a protector, I would say that creating a very favorable environment in the home, wherein everyone has a chance, everyone feels safe, protected. How do you know that they feel safe and protected? When they are able to express what they are feeling, when they are able to share their needs, it means they are feeling safe and protected. If they are not feeling protected, they will not speak out. They will suppress their own needs and emotions. So we have a therapy called transaction analysis, and in that this is shared, that sometimes children become what are called as adaptive children, because they are always so scared because of seeing the aggression or violence from any one of the parents. Sometimes it could be the mother or the father, that they don't speak. They just want to become a people's pleaser, and so that everything is safe, so that nobody is harmed. Either my mother is harmed or I am harmed. So then that's how they become. That's why they don't express. And then they continue the same thing when they get into relationships. So for protection, the first thing that is needed is there should be a safe environment. There should be emotional safety. There would be conflicts between husband and wife. That's natural. It happens. You're different people. We were not talking about conflict. We were talking about a person feeling choked because he or she is not able to speak out what they are feeling. So creating emotional safety would be a very important part of protection, wherein the man and the women agree that they would have open communication. They may not agree on certain things. You listen to someone, you may not agree with them, but at least they have an opportunity to express. They have the right to talk. I think that's very important. And if they learn how to communicate in a right way, using things like non-violent communication, then things move very smoothly, even though they might be radically different by nature. But still they can live together and serve very well together because they respect each other's needs. Everybody's needs matter. So we have this Vedic sentence that Sarvena Sukhino Bhavantu. Let everyone be happy. When will everyone be happy? When their needs are met. When will their needs be met? When they are allowed to meet their own needs and when they are allowed to express their own needs. So that can be one form of protection. And another, when we talk about protection, if it becomes control, it means we think we know what they need better than them. Sometimes it may even come from a place of care, but then that doesn't become abuse. But when we think we know better than them, then that creates a problem. So we can definitely state our views about how we feel somebody would benefit, but it cannot be enforced on somebody, because everybody has a right to take their own decisions. And women and men are equally intelligent when it comes to taking decisions about their own life. So everybody should be given a chance to speak. That is what I feel about protection. And I feel that this starts the seed. I don't know what comes first, the chicken or the egg. I think the seed starts from parenting. Because the way we are doing our parenting, the children will get those lessons and they in turn will go on to perpetrate the same, same things that the parents are doing. So to stop domestic violence from happening, one is what is happening in the present, dealing with it, and creating awareness, giving knowledge to couples so that they do the right they behave in a proper way so that they don't continue this negative legacy, it doesn't go ahead. That's my thought. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you brought in very beautiful points and spoke very eloquently on this. And your thoughts are really progressive and I think very important for people to hear and understand. Thank you very much. Uttama Prabhu and Partha Prabhu would like to share your thoughts on this.
I'd just like to say that Radharani Prabhu and Krishnarupa Prabhu hit the nail on the head and drove it in and countersunk it in 1 pound. And it is very important that couples, they have to communicate and they have to express their needs and understand each other in that way. It's just actually very simple. And we actually do a section in premarital education on who's going to make the decisions in the marriage. And it's quite interesting. And we had one couple once, it turned out the lady, she wanted a husband who was going to 100% take charge and make all the decisions. And the young man, he came from a single parent family and he saw his mother always struggling to make decisions on her own. So he wanted a wife that was going to be a sounding board to help him make decisions in life. And they talked to us a couple of days later and they decided that they were not going to pursue the relationship because they had such a mismatched expectation on decision making. And so if she can find a husband who's going to make all the decisions, she could be happy. But it was good that couple figured out they had those mismatched expectations, because if they would have found that out 5-10 years down the road, it could have been very problematic in the relationship. So that kind of open communication and discussing expectations, especially before marriage, it's really important for creating harmony in marriage.
So the question was, what does protection mean? And it's interesting because in the domestic abuse GBT statement, GBC statement, they list all the different types of abuse. It's not just physical abuse. There's physical abuse, there's emotional abuse, there's financial abuse, there's mental abuse, there's spiritual abuse. So really abuse is the opposite to protection. So when we think, what is protection? It means to, like financial abuse is you don't let the other person have anything. It's all the power and control, because abuse is power and control. It's not relationships. It's power and control. So to be a protector financially, it means that we have to be trustworthy and responsible. Or to be a protector physically, we have to endeavor to, for a man to keep a woman safe. I remember my father taking me downtown one time when I think I was like 12 or 13, and he says, you should walk on the inside. The man walks on the outside. It's safer. Like he taught me that, I was supposed to protect. It was kind of my upbringing, but we put, women at the back of the parikram path, so just keeping them physically safe, looking out for their safety. That's protection. And mental safety, that, our thoughts should be safe in the other person's hands, not that they're going to, use it to manipulate us or harm us later. And that, we need that emotional protection, not emotional abuse. So it's so important that, women's emotions are accepted, even if, our husbands don't agree. And that, they still, respect us and hold space for them and don't take them personally and get all upset. It's just, our emotional things that we're sharing with you. And spiritual protection is so vital, because if we're not given protection, we start to doubt ourselves and lose our self-esteem. And then we may not even think that we're worthy to worship Krishna. So it's so harmful to have, spiritual abuse also. So protection is in all those areas. It's not just, hold up the shield when the arrow's coming. It's a variety of ways. And they have to be, protection has to be in every area of life.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing all these different layers of what protection really means. And I think you really put it all together so beautifully. Thank you for sharing that. Radharani Prabhu, you have something to say?
Yes. Yeah, when Uttama Prabhu was speaking, this another point came to my mind, that sometimes, like I just recently heard one of our devotees speaking about this. We had a meeting, and in that there was a discussion about loving relationships amongst devotees. So this was one of the points that came up, and I just thought it might be relevant here. So what he said that sometimes in order to help people, we might have to move out of the way. It's not that always we would be caring for our family or caring for devotees or caring for our wife in a particular way. It should be done this way. No. Sometimes we may understand that we are not well equipped to do this task. Then in that time, we should take the help. We should be humble enough to take help of others who could guide or who could, help you to understand how to protect your family correctly or take care of them. Because if you don't know, if you have not come from that type of family, if the family background has not been very stable, you may not, it's very difficult for you to give someone what you have not received unless you get trained or unless you get some knowledge on that. So sometimes getting help at the right time, allowing them to talk to others about the problem without worrying about what people will think about you, so that you can remedy the situation and, improve the relationship in some way. So this understanding also, that awareness also should be created, that it is okay. Because for men, we need to be tough. That means we can't reveal our problems. But if you don't reveal your problems, the problems will never be resolved. So this awareness, that part of protection is being willing to accept that I need help in some areas and being ready to take that help from wherever you can get it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we had a very beautiful discussion on the concept of what really protection means. I thought I'll add a little bit on that from my point of view and my thoughts. Protection really means creating a circle of safety within which people feel safe. People feel that here is a place where I can sleep peacefully and be rest assured that no harm will happen. So a lot of times, when there is no safety, the first thing that gets affected is sleep. If the quality of somebody's sleep is bad, somewhere some kind of disturbance has propped in. So a lot of times, like if you look at from a historical perspective, of course, we don't believe in this caveman ideas, but just to make this point a little more clearer, when men would live in the forest, there's a lot of danger all around us. There's a lot of danger all around, from wild animals, from bad weather, and so many things. And to protect themselves from all these elements, from all these dangers, people started staying together in small communities. So typically in a community, you can sleep at night and be rest assured, if there is a forest fire, if there is some animal that is attacking, someone will take care of you. And when you have that circle of safety, the natural result is trust and cooperation. You can't tell people, trust me and cooperate. If they don't feel safe, they don't trust and cooperate. That's a natural result of it. In many organizations and many families, people have not created an environment of trust and safety, or rather a circle of safety. Many times, within that circle of safety, people feel unsafe. Within a family, people feel unsafe. Within an organization, people feel unsafe. And naturally, if you feel unsafe, you can't trust and you can't cooperate. In my understanding, protection means creating a circle of safety where everyone feels in this place, I can totally be myself. I can totally trust, and I'm happy to cooperate because I feel safe here. The Bhagavad Gita begins with this. Arjun was concerned that if all the men die, who will protect the women? So Arjun's concern was not so much from the point of view of only physical protection. He was also concerned from the point of view of that feeling of being safe in a city, or feeling of being safe in a home, feeling of being safe in a community. And that feeling of safety is what the idea of protection is really about.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare